intimidating.
Okay, so I'm gonna start this. Oh, everybody's getting an up close view of me here. And I want to share this screen. And then
Did
Okay.
you ever get the parts for this system?
Which
HE or parts that could make it.
will it tell you if someone tries to enter? Let me see.
Hey Brenda, can you hear us okay?
I wonder if it's not through the TV again. Hold on. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Jim. I guess I lied to you.
I said that on the video.
The video just came in.
Like a few hours ago.
Yeah, it was this morning.
So you won't like show my houses and you lied to me.
Okay. What about this? So when they talk, it should come out through here if they have questions. I think. But Brenda didn't say if she can hear. Where's the chat?
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, usually it'll click up there. Why does it say sharing is
I don't
paused?
know.
They're right here, I think. Is that, nope, that's not it.
Here, let me see this really quick. I don't need to see all my notes.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
The splitter and the cord, yes.
There's Mr. Vogel. Oh, yeah.
Right here, Jim.
That's,
I just got, I guess. we
I
just
know.
need
I don't know why
that.
it keeps pausing it.
I mean, if you want to just put plumbing, build these.
Where was the splitter?
Probably take it.
Good.
I don't know if that's good or not.
No,
but-
it didn't come up with this thing of this.
Okay, I think I put it on automatically join, so you don't have to worry about people coming in
Why
and
doesn't
out.
it come out for us?
So,
That was our computer.
yeah, I totally like it.
Did.
Did, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to- I was hungry.
Normally I'm up on it if there's gonna be food. Hey, it's Jeremiah's birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I made it.
Is this what you brought?
Made it 39.
Okay. Where'd you put this?
Barely.
I'm gonna just put this out.
I'm technically living in 39.
That's right. Well, you made it. I yielded to it showing up. That's right.
Terrible.
Alrighty, well, it's 12:02, so you can get started.
Okay,
And that way people will join in, and there are some people listening online as well.
so here's my question. So, not to make your set. Is there like, video or just audio, so I can just operate the slides, or you want me somewhere else? And then I say,
I can give you a clicker to operate the slides if you'd like.
that would be great.
Well, that's on Zoom.
Maybe. Happy birthday.
Hey, thank you.
You put something pretty much out there, man.
Or I might have to do it for you. Because we just had this system reworked and it's
It's, yeah,
100 times worse than it was before.
I'm sorry, that's not.
It is very frustrating.
So yeah, I'll do whatever you want, whatever's the word best for you.
Either you can just
Yeah.
We can do it, yeah, or for some reason it's not working to hit, oh, yeah, it is, now it is.
That's totally fine.
Oh, now it's working.
Am I blocking anyone's office?
That's Jim's.
Okay.
Now it's working.
Sorry, Jim. Okay. I'll just use the arrows because that sounds cool. Actually, forward, back. That's just way too
Yep.
cool. I have to use it. And I got my
Yeah,
arrows. Okay, so
So, yeah, we have a couple people online. We have Sunny and Brenda online. A couple people here. You'll probably see some people filter.
sure, no problem.
That's just what happened. That's just how it works sometimes in the real estate world. So today we have Mr. Chris Noble from Rock Solid Plumbing and Heating with us today. And for you guys online, I will watch and see if you guys have any questions. Can you guys hear okay? Can you hear okay, Brenda? Okay. I'm assuming that means yes. Okay.
Head down for you.
Okay. Well, she raised her hand. so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
assuming that means yes.
Cool. So this has got some room for questions at the end, but also along as you go. So this is only good for me if it's useful to you guys. So if there's something that seems useful that you want me to talk more on, if you have a specific question on it, just stop me and we'll go from there. So I tried really hard to come up with a funny title like Devin asked me to. I couldn't come up with anything that was anywhere near appropriate. So maybe next time. So pre-sale inspections plus a side of preventative maintenance or whoever that may be relative to.
I like your graphic.
I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not wanting to work on me now. Hold on.
Oh,
Uh-oh. Did I click on this? Technical error. Hold on. There we go. So plumbing heating inspections for real estate transactions and property managers. What I'm going to go on over is kind of the anatomy on our side of it for the best way we feel to operate a transaction from like the inspection to the repairs to whatever, however that process is going to work for you guys. We'll go into that. And pitfalls to avoid when that comes on up, helping set your client expectations so they're not getting slammed with this huge bill and going, oh, I didn't expect this. Well, we can kind of work through that. And some proactive property management stuff. I don't know who all does property management here for you guys. A handful of people do some here and there. Maybe that's relevant. It's not, we're not gonna spend a ton of time on that. So, all right, we've been in business for a little over 6 years. And I actually started the industry about a week after I graduated high school. And actually started working for this fantastic birthday boy, Jeremiah. So we go back a long ways. And we just realized that, you know, in the industry that we wanted to work closer to home. We live in the valley. And we started a business and went from there. So it's a little bit about us. We do a lot of residential. We do some commercial work. We do a lot of maintenance, retrofit, stuff like that. Pre-sale inspections. We do some new construction. But today is about the inspection side of things. That's me. Then our service manager, Amy. And then Jason, and the camera adds a couple pounds in a sweet tan. So no judging, but that tan is real. Okay, so we really want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. So now that we have a service call, and again, stop me anytime you guys got something for me. So how often does it happen where you guys are, how often does something plumbing and heating related impede one of your guys' real estate transactions? I mean, it does happen, I would assume, maybe
I
things.
haven't had one DFT over plumbing and heat issue, but there's always something.
Yeah, always something that comes on up, or sometimes there can be a large expense that's, you know, not fun to communicate like 2 days before it's supposed to close or something along those lines. Like, yeah, go
We
ahead.
used to see, I mean, this is maybe not necessarily what you're asking, but we used to see like where a lot of times they would ask for like a heating inspection in the offer because we're in such a competitive market. We don't see that as often now. We see it come later once you're already in contract during the inspection period, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of like the real estate agent minutia type of thing. with
Yeah.
The sales end, and that's where I try to stay out of that. So, because you guys are awesome with the sales end of your jobs, so I also approach this differently than I would, let's say, with your personal house. You know, I know you're gonna live there, ask those type of questions. Say, hey, here's some maintenance that you need done. Let's take a look at this. I understand a lot of times for the purpose of a real estate transaction, I'm obviously can't overlook something that's inoperable or unsafe. But, everything doesn't need to be pristine necessarily when they're buying a house built in 1990. They're not supposed to have everything. So I approach that differently as far as how I would if it was your house or someone's living there, property manager, for example. So step one is you guys have your property and you know that, you guys know that you're gonna need an inspection. So you go ahead and you call us, you call our office, or you email us, and you give us a couple of pertinent details. You're gonna typically speak with Amy, she's our service manager. And you're gonna give us things like the address of the property, closing date that you guys, or at least approximate closing date. This helps set expectations for us and you so that we can make sure that we're doing stuff along your schedule. So for example, Jeremiah calls with one, Devin calls with one, Jeremiah's got a closing date 3 weeks later than Devin. We kind of can prioritize on our own end to make sure everyone's happy. Any kind of access info, whether it's gonna be a day code or whether there's some other situation. What needs to be inspected, we're gonna go over that a little bit more later. And a copy of the home inspection if you already have one. So oftentimes you'll have a home inspector already come on in and say, hey, in addition to general inspection and cleaning of the equipment, we need these items addressed. Can you address these items? Oftentimes we can. If we can't, we'll let you know. That way you guys can kind of plan and go from there.
What would be something that you couldn't address?
We
I mean,
don't,
I do see that, like, especially now that a lot of times it's handled more in the inspection period than it was previously. Like, we'll see like the extension of that TPR or whatever. I'm like, I see it, I see it on almost every inspection. It's not 6
That's fine.
inches from the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, but what kind of things would you not?
the
do?
one that's coming to mind is like we don't do wood burning appliances. So for example, like, hey, it has a wood burning fireplace, can you inspect the chimney or change the damper out on that? That's something we say, no, we can't. So we can do most things and we'll do most things. That's one of the things that's coming to mind where I'm like, no.
Toyos?
Yeah, we do toilets. Okay. So, all right, so second thing would be, once we've kind of hammered that out, as far as what you guys need when, we'll get it on the schedule, communicate that with you, go out, perform the inspection. Inspection's gonna be inspection reports and repairs. There's gonna be an equipment inspection checklist. Our checklists are custom that we do that work for us, and it's different for whatever piece of equipment it is. There's a big difference, for example, between an electric water heater and a tankless water heater. That's just one small example. So we will then give you the inspection report and then an invoice with description of work done. If there's repairs that need to happen or that we recommend happen, we'll go ahead and quote that then too, so you can make that decision and work that out in the real estate ease, I guess I should say. All right. Okay. All right. So as far as this, I'll go back one. This really ties on into what needs to be inspected in the first blue column there. So what needs to be serviced? Now, this is something that we'll do whatever you guys want. So oftentimes we'll get it'll be a confusing request to say just all the systems or just the furnace or something like that. And I don't expect you guys to necessarily know all the minutia of what's in every single house. So typically the type of stuff that we service, so we inspect, so we're visually inspecting, taking a look, we're checking certain things like electrical readings, things like that. We're checking them and we're also cleaning them as we go, okay? So for example, on a tankless water heater, also known as non-demand or instantaneous water heater, all the same thing, we'll go ahead and clean the heat exchanger on those with some fluid. So we're inspecting and cleaning at the same time. Furnace, I'm sure that we guys know most of this stuff, but I'm just gonna,
Can I ask a really dumb question?
no, there's no dumb questions. Go ahead.
Okay, because I've had this come up before with just all the special people we get to work with. Is there a different, so you said you'll clean it and service it.
Mhm.
So I was representing the seller,
Mhm.
special seller, and it said to service it.
Yeah.
So when I was talking about it with him, I was talking about, they'll come out and they'll clean and service. And he's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. The verbiage only says service, not clean. And And then when I called the person that we were using at the time, they're like, oh yeah, that's, you know, if I'm not cleaning it, then it's this. If I'm only servicing it. And I just thought that was really interesting because I don't even know what it means to service it.
Okay, this is perfect. This is the type of questions I love. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna reverse this a little bit. We've been asked a couple times to, hey, I just want to inspect it. I don't want you guys to touch anything, I don't want you to clean anything. When you say just inspect it, when the plumbing and heating world, you know, sometimes you can like touch something and it stops working. So we take that very seriously. Like, okay, if you want me to just inspect this, we're talking this is a visual inspection. So inspect a furnace, for example. I go to the thermostat, does it turn on? Yeah. Does it turn off? Yeah. I look at it, does it, you know, real basic. You could inspect it. There's really not a lot of value at all.
I
Like,
think we're expecting you to make sure that the exchanger.
yeah, no, I can look at that too. No, you take a look at the heat exchanger at pinholes. That's another thing too. Visual inspection on a furnace to be able to determine whether that has a crack in the heat exchanger, not always apparent. And so we do combustion analysis on it, which we'll do. That's a machine that we use that measures the exhaust composition. So we can determine a couple other ways. So, but again, there's not a whole lot of value there as much in the way that we do it. We don't do flat rate pricing. We don't do unit pricing. We do for some of our, on our maintenance agreements we do. This is completely separate. We do it on an hourly basis because I don't know if your furnace is located in the garage or if I'm gonna have to move, you know, 6 trunks of Christmas trees out of the way in your crawl space to get to it, and you guys don't necessarily need it. So for the most part, while we can do a visual inspection, that's a real basic visual inspection. Usually we do inspection and servicing, and because it's all hourly, we're already 3/4 of the way through. The fact that we have a flashlight, we're down in front of it, and we can go down the checklist, check a couple electrical reviews from there. So while yes, we can do an inspection, and that's gonna be at the cheapest because it's all hourly, it's quick, whoop, we can run through it. It's not nearly as thorough, and it doesn't take us that much more time to actually clean the equipment, but we can do that. So a furnace is essentially a box with a flame with a big blower motor in it. So think a fan that blows warm air throughout ductwork system in your house, this building. This is a forced air heating system. And my guess is you don't use a furnace, you use something else, more commercial aspect. I shouldn't go on that tangent. I'm sorry. So a furnace is basically, that's how most houses in the valley are heated, specifically new construction. Big box with furnace in it with a flame in it that blows heat around the house. Really basic, very, very, very common. A boiler is a lot different than a furnace. It uses flame to heat up liquid, typically water, but not always. Sometimes glycol, which is basically antifreeze. Some areas of the country it's steam. And that's going to supply either baseboard heat, in-floor heat. Those are the two most typical. There's several things that you can do with it. You can heat a lot of things with it. Sidewalks, for example, we could go down a whole other, we could make a whole presentation on that. But boilers are a lot more typical in 80s houses and older, and some higher end houses it seems.
Having heated sidewalks in Alaska is kind of like having an in-ground sprinkler system at your house.
Yeah,
Right,
who would do that?
Who would do
So
that?
We did.
stupid.
That's an inside thing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, it's
But
pretty,
having a
pretty
heated
cool.
sidewalk, having a heated driveway in Alaska is ridiculous.
We've done it.
I know, we a lot.
We've had people in new construction ask for it.
Mhm.
And it actually, we just had somebody ask for it and.
It's doable.
That's when you know the economy's hot. And people ask. for
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm like, you guys are making too much damn money. Yeah,
Teenagers that can shovel are a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay? That's gonna be a lot better way to go.
yeah, I mean, and because it's only really done in concrete, right?
You can do an asphalt too, but typically concrete. Honestly, one of the areas it's most common in is not even residential. It's small commercial applications where you're worried about slips, trips, and falls.
Sure.
You know, or like, oh man, this person tried to live in the mail and they wiped out. Now you gotta deal with that. Or when
Paperwork. for someone-
you know, you don't have someone dedicated necessarily to shovel the driveways, or maybe, or sorry, shovel the sidewalk, something like that. So it's used typically in commercial applications. but it does come on up, and that is something that a boiler can be used for, is this example. Wall furnaces, you mentioned earlier Toyo. Toyo is just a really well-known wall furnace. A wall furnace is basically a box that mounts on an exterior wall. Very simple, controls are typically on the top, and blows out heat. The Toyo is a fuel oil wall furnace. Rinnai makes natural gas and propane wall furnaces. So Toyo's blanket statement for fuel oil wall furnace, but wall furnaces in general, a lot of houses have those to heat a small addition, or sometimes you see 2 or 3 of them heating the whole house. That's something that is serviceable, something that we do.
Is it Toyo a brand?
Toyo is a brand.
Okay,
It's
it's like
kinda
a Kleenex thing.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly.
Okay.
Xerox.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, just like that. Just like Kleenex and Xerox, it's synonymous with wall furnace. It just happens to be a fuel oil wall furnace. A very good one.
Does Toyo have a gas version?
Not that I know of. I think, to my knowledge, Toyo is only fuel oil. But that's a really popular one that comes up a lot. Garage unit heaters. Now, that's typically a natural gas garage unit heater. The Modines, we see them all the time. We service those. And this one,
The average person don't buy a Modine heater.
you can buy, that's a good question. So you can buy some similar version.
I'd like to buy a hot dog at Lowe's, but I wondered if Modine is available to average consumer without wholesale companies.
Usually not. Most of the wholesalers that sell that type of equipment, you have to be on an account to sell anything that's natural gas equipment. That's kind of like their internal policy. You might be able to get one, but typically.
I've never seen a Modine. I've only seen the hot dogs.
Well,
So,
Modine
I'm
is
so-
a hot dog.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Modine is the brand
Right.
and hot dog is the main, is the model. I'm sorry. So it's a Modine hot dog.
Oh, hot dog is Modine?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
Yes.
I
Burris
didn't know
is-
that either.
Burris is some.
Yeah, they do some. So, and again, it depends on, like, for example, across the street at Keller, they're only gonna sell you natural gas equipment if you have a journeyman plumber's license or some kind of equivalent, because they're looking at it from, oh man, the liability aspect. Ferguson will probably sell you anything over the counter. Yeah, and so again, that's another example for a hot dog.
I could buy a hot dog at Lowe's.
They sell it there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's, okay,
So
so,
that's why I thought it was different, but I
Oh,
can't
I'm
buy,
sorry.
I can't buy the square gray Modine. At least I don't.
Yeah.
And there's different makes of the hot dog too.
yeah, so let's talk
I'm
about.
sure it's probably a retail version.
Yeah.
So on the garage, so unit heaters, we're usually, that's like in a garage, sometimes that's in, usually that's in the garage or some kind of shop bay. All that is, in whatever configuration, square, rectangular, slim, big, not, box hanging on the ceiling, typically with a flame in it and a fan behind it, which is super basic, but a fantastic way to do it.
But it's not rocket science. Oh, for God's sakes, what's your money?
Exactly.
Right?
I mean,
But yeah, so I just wonder why, or if you could ever, yeah, sometimes people just want to change it out themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
So.
Lynn's hand.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So here's the thing too, that, and I'll go back on it with the inspection. Just because something was working and it had been installed for 5 years and was putting out heat and everything else, the venting is one of the biggest things that we're looking at. So I see all kinds of stuff that's completely illegally vented, that's microdosing carbon
like
monoxide.
Jim would have done. He probably would have.
Probably, and that way, when you get someone's license in there to take a look, they can go, oh, this is kind of jacked up, let's make a small tweak or whatever. So I think that's part of the liability that this wholesaler is looking
No, I
at.
saw one, the whole top of it was black. Because it had, the wind had blown the flame back inside or something. And so,
Or
yeah,
just,
it
or
was
it
not-
just wasn't atmospheric venting, it was. the flame
Yeah, it was
kind of.
It wasn't anything like that, but it was like, the wind was blowing on the, it didn't have the right cap or whatever.
Shouldn't take
Yeah,
on
it's done.
Jeremiah on his birthday. you know?
Yeah, you should. That's more of a reason. too.
All right, so tankless / on-demand water heaters / instantaneous water heaters, they're all the same thing. I always like to call them tankless, because if you call them on-demand or instantaneous, some people will ask, why am I waiting to get hot water? And that's why I started calling them tankless. So yes, those are very popular. There's a whole lot of those out there. Some of these service.
Because your on-demand hot water heater is 207 feet from your sink.
That's another conversation, Jeremiah. But yeah, you're right. I should say natural gas water heater. That's just a natural gas tank style water heater. Where in a lot of houses, it's just a big round cylinder with the metal vent coming off the top, real basic. Indoor, go
So
ahead.
those units, like when I first started this,
Which one's the tankless?
10 years ago, yeah, the tankless.
Yes, sir.
On the wall.
Yeah.
People didn't like them because they didn't put water up fast enough. But now my understanding is that they're better design, so they good. Because they didn't work in Alaska, at least the original ones. Does that sound right?
That's a great question.
If I see old ones, should I be like, questioning?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the long story short is technology's come a long way. Hey, Karen. Technology's come a long way with tankless water heaters in the last even 5 years. So 10, 15 years ago, yeah, you're absolutely right. How a tankless water heater works and technology is constantly improving is, people will say, how many gallons a minute can this thing do? How much hot water can I get? It's all based upon the concept of temperature rise. So for example, if you have a water heater, like the common one, that would be 5 gallons a minute at a 77-degree temperature rise. Groundwater in Alaska is typically 35 degrees, right? If you're in California, it'd be 60 degrees. So the same water heater that we're installing up here, which will do 5 to 6 gallons a minute to satisfy most houses, will do 15 gallons a minute and satisfy commercial buildings in California. So the short answer is yes, they do work. Yes, they're great. They're not for every application. And that's just kind of one of the things that from a plumbing, heating design, you take a look at and go, this is not going to meet needs, or it is. In some cases, we put 2 in. There's a bunch of things that they can do. But yeah, that's a good question. They've gotten a lot better reliability-wise and performance-wise. And a new construction is really typical.
And so related to that, to the question I was asking for class starts, it's like what brands you carry.
Mhm.
At least my small amount of experience with those,
Mhm.
is it's usually best to get whoever installed the damn thing to work on it because they're so specific to.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, finding parts is hard for people unless they carry that brand.
Okay, that's a.
Or they're so complicated that you almost need to be trained on that.
Yeah, again, that's another good question. So tankless water heaters, contractor can pick any kind of which one they want to use for whatever reason. So what we do at Rock Solid, we typically install just 2 different types. One is called Navian or Navian, or like tanks. We get that from a multitude of wholesalers. We have multiple access avenues to parts. And we train on that type of stuff internally. They're not, if you have a trained technician, they can figure it out. Man, I don't care which company, they do a pretty good job in my opinion. The other ones that we install, you guys probably see a lot of, and they even sell these at Lowe's, are Renines. They're little gray, silver looking ones. I actually have a picture here of one. And those are much more of a budget friendly. They work just fine. They don't have as high efficiency rating. They don't have as high an output. But in general, to dumb it down on the technician side, you mainly, it's just like a snow machine or a lawnmower or anything. It's like, it's making combustion. So does it have a spark? Does it have air? Okay, it's got those things. There's an electrical issue. I'd say in overall, most trained technicians can troubleshoot them and service them really well. So they're getting better along those lines. So
Can I ask a question about that?
absolutely, that's what we're doing.
What is a trained technician?
Jeremiah. No.
Well,
Okay.
I
like,
am not a service plumber.
I
Never had
mean,
that.
well,
There's a
I
difference.
mean, I guess no matter what company people hire.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have the expectation that the person that goes out there knows what they're doing, has some sort of training or certification. I'm not sure that that's actually the case.
Yeah, how often they send the young Uber head out back?
But yeah, no, but exactly. And so like what should we be aware of? Because I mean, I've had issues where, perfect example, I had somebody go out and they said, yeah, I don't think the water heater needs replaced. And basically my client said, we want a second opinion. I sent Eric out there and he's like, it absolutely does not need replaced. It needs this. So I don't know what kind of training that person had, or because, I mean, and a lot of times we're, they're making decisions about high dollar items, like what kind of training is required to be able to do this, or what should we be should we be asking of like the companies that we're hiring or not hiring any longer?
So So I will try to answer that question as best as I can.
Okay.
In general, in Alaska, there is not a huge governing body with HVAC or AKA service plumbers. There's not. If you want to become a journeyman plumber, which does not necessarily make you a service plumber, that's a regulated trade. You have to go through an apprenticeship program or the union, take a bunch of accredited stuff. It takes typically 4 to 5 years to get. So the reason why I mention that is when you call a company and say, hey, I want this service, you are taking, in essence, a leap of faith that the contractor that you called is licensed, bonded, insured. You can verify that, it's all public information. You can also ask, say, hey, what's your mechanical contractor's license? That's on all of our estimates and stuff. Everyone who works with salt should have a mechanical contractor's license. In order to have one, you also have to have an administrator's license attached to that. These are a level of credentials you don't need to dig yourself into necessarily, except for if they have a mechanical contractor's license, they clearly have some level of competence that you can feel healthy with, that you can feel comfortable with. If you can have Devon's plumbing and heating. You can name it as Devon's plumbing and heating. You don't have any credentials there.
But can I legally operate?
So
Not
that,
Anchorage.
so not in Anchorage, no. And so not in Anchorage because the municipality protects a lot of stuff from that.
Well, you have to have an additional license to operate in it. A municipality.
To bring it back, like you can do, and again, this is a state statute. It's like $5,000 or $10,000 worth of work underneath a blanket of a handyman license or they call it specialty.
Yeah,
And you don't have to be in anything to get one of those.
sure.
So yes, and again, like tying it all back into, you gotta have, you ask these questions. Hey, what are you guys doing? Like, tell me a little about who you're sending out. Or what's your mechanical contractor's license? So what are you guys doing for training? So for example, we have 2 dedicated service techs at Rock Salt. One of them went to school for a year at the AbTech Charter College and has some, I don't know the exact certificate, it's with him. And the other one is a journeyman plumber who has been cross-trained to do service type of work. So again, it's kind of a mixy-mashy question. It's tough because there's not necessarily always a clear case. There's a ton of variance. And you can have some people that are on paper who are really qualified at job. So I just ask a lot of questions. And the biggest thing that I do at Rock Solid is I review all the inspection reports. And eventually when it's not me reviewing them all, someone else very qualified to review all inspection reports. Because like you said, you could get someone that's got a Uber with a vacuum, it's 4 months of experience, you don't know that, and you're saying you need new X, Y, Z, and you get a second, really, I need a new furnace, it's only 4 years old, really? Okay, these are some warning signs.
Or the opposite, where, you're working with a buyer and they have, Devon's Plumbing and Heating come out and they're like, yeah, they're like, good to go. And then, they move in. I mean, this happened to me with my water heater, and I slept there one night and I was like, oh my gosh, this doesn't sound right. So I called the same company who had went out 3 weeks prior and they're like, yeah, this water heater's toast. And I'm like, well, 3 weeks ago you said it was good to go. And they're like, well, that guy doesn't work here anymore. He was no good. And I'm like,
You hired him.
yeah. And I was like, yeah. So I'm just, I don't know.
So I'll give you a small example of something that happened with us. So I hired a guy this last year who actually had his degree in HVAC, 30 years of experience, and he has gas fitters license. So he actually has the accreditation. And long story short, he was not very proficient in his job. And it was actually for Kelsey Bow. We did an inspection, he did for us, and we missed a cracked key exchange on our wall furnace. So we replaced that for free, right? Free of charge, because we were out there like a week before and we just replaced it. And he got fired for sure.
Yeah.
Later on. But
That is not what happened on mine.
well,
just
I'm just telling you, so you asked about accreditation and stuff like that. And that's the problem we have in the industry in general.
Yeah.
Lack of training. So, and that's all internal too. I feel we do a lot of training internally at Rock Salt Plumbing Heating, but again, that's a guy had experience, had accreditation, had everything, and you kind of
It's happened.
It's happened. And as a contractor, you have to make training a priority, and you have to double check. And what so really it's boiled down to a reputable contractor, one that you have a relationship with, one that you can talk with, reasons to service manager, things like that, or stuff like that can happen. So it can happen to anybody, I'd say.
That's kind of what I thought, but
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad you cleared it up, because I was like, I just always assumed that you needed some high level of training
No.
to do this.
Okay, so that's the thing. You do, like, I'm gonna just use Jeremiah took on for their birthday as an example. Like, Jeremiah is a mechanical administrator, which is a master's license. It's very hard to get. Someone with 1 year dedicated service training dedicated service training, probably more proficient than Jeremiah at say fixing furnaces.
Agreed, 100%. That's why I tell
There's
people,
a-
I'm not a service
it is.
plumber, I never was, and it's a different breed.
It's a huge thing. I mean, there's a huge
Figure it
aspect.
out.
Whole
They were
huge
just an
wide umbrella.
New construction installer, and then eventually estimation and stuff like that.
And you get into-
I never,
Yeah.
like a service guy.
At that point, you get into the engineering aspect and stuff too. I mean, but again, that's why as a contractor, you have to make sure that you are using competent people, because at the end of the day, your electrical contractor wants their names, their brand, everything else taken care of. So you make sure you're not sending out donors with a vacuum, to go ahead and service $1 million house. Make sure it's what you got going on. This person needs to be trained, this is a program. A lot of times, some of the best programs are internal programs. This is how we do it. This is why we do it. Like a rock solid, for example, we make a 10 most common item list. So for furnaces and for boilers and for water heaters, these are things that we train internally. That's not like a accredited program or something like that.
Sure.
We'll make sure we take care of people. Okay, so natural gas, let's say natural gas water heaters in the second column over here. That's the tank style, where it's just a big round tank cylinder, the vent coming off the top of it. Super common. There is servicing on that needs to happen. An indirect, it's indirect water heater. Again, that's a big, and I have some pictures later. It's a big cylinder that is being heated. The water inside of it's being heated, not by natural gas or electric, but by hot water from a boiler. Yes, yeah, that's a really common way of doing it. Electric water heaters, really basic. There is some stuff to double check and inspect on those as well. Other equipment that's not really considered heating or hot water equipment, the HRV. Does anyone know what HRV stands for? Am I not allowed to answer?
Recovery,
Heating
ventilation, or
return.
something like that.
Oh, no, she's
Heating
close.
return vent.
Okay, that's another answer. Heat recovery ventilator.
Later.
Close. That just allows your house, that basically,
I mean, I don't know what it means, but.
Okay.
I mean, it's like a mechanical air system, right? Like it
Circulating
draws
air.
air out and puts it in, like fresh air out of the
Mhm.
outside and puts it in and gets rid of the old air. So,
that's exactly what it does. Basically, new construction houses are being built so tight, which is good. They're not breathing. So it's like when you sleep in a tent and you wake up from camping and it's all this like moisture on the inside. If you have a really tight house, it'll do the exact same thing. So an HRV, recovery ventilator, allows your house to breathe in mechanical means. And what it does is when it sucks its stale air out of your house, and at the same time, it's drawing in fresh air from outside the house. And instead of just blowing warm air that you just paid to heat outside, sucking in ice cold air, which you're then gonna have to heat, it goes across a heat exchanger, which basically preheats the cold air coming in. So it allows your house to breathe while reclaiming as much of the heat from the stale air as possible to preheat the fresh ice cold incoming air into your house to be as efficient as possible while allowing you to breathe. Otherwise, you just open up the window when it's 10 below and you freeze yourself out, but you still get ventilation. It's a means to avoid doing that.
Get back to, I just have a question about how the boiler heated hot water works.
Yeah.
Is it actually running, are you drinking the water that's actually going to the boiler, or is there a pipe inside there that's just heating it like in 40?
That's a great question. You are not drinking that water because
never thought of that.
no, I do see that.
I always
from time-
wondered, yeah,
No, I do see that from time to time.
a little glycol.
And it's totally wrong. Even if it's not glycol, the stagnant heating water
Uh-huh.
it's the color of your jacket. It is god awful, terrible, nasty stuff that, and it's actually called a cross connection. It's illegal to use heat. It's illegal to use heating water. With the heating system to also be mixed with your potable water system. So how it works is an indirect water here is a really typical example. And actually, is it's a big tank, and imagine like an Arby's curly Q French fry in it. And then that's a heat exchanger. It's basically a tube that has a bunch of twists in it and goes on out. And if that's a stainless steel tube, it's completely surrounded by water. That water is what you actually drink and shower with and all the other stuff. So all it does is a tankless water heater has its own thermostat on it that we call an aquastat. And it automatically talks to your heating system and says, hey, we need more hot water. And your boiler sends really hot water through that coil, which again is in its own self-contained stainless steel tube, which then heats up the jacket and everything else. It's pretty cool.
Is it efficient? compared
It's
to-
very efficient. It's a very efficient way of doing it, especially on upfront costs with like the installation. So for example, if you already have, you have to have a boiler to do it anyways. This is kind of like on a new construction type of style. I'm getting off on a tangent, but yes, it is upfront. It's cheaper to do that, and you can heat very large loads. You can serve very large loads of hot water. So like my house is an example. I have 4 bathrooms. There's no way one tankless water heater is gonna cut that at all, period. I gotta have 2 of them to do it. I don't have to worry about all the other complications that makes when I can just have one tank that's just bigger. 65 gallons, 80 gallons, 20 gallons, so on and so forth. This is a very typical way to heat commercial buildings. I mean, to serve hot water for commercial buildings as well. Electric water heater, those are pretty basic. So HRV, we talked about that. Fireplaces, natural gas fireplaces, yeah, they have gas. They have carbon monoxide potential. They have venting. We clean the glass. There's a couple other things we can do with them as well. But yeah, there is something that does need to be serviced. And then AC units, few and far between, but they are out there, and they, if that's something that you want service, we can talk about that.
Has anybody ever seen an AC unit?
We just sold a house. that happened.
You're going to see a lot more.
I'm not
Is it
sure
brand new construction?
what years old. I've seen a couple, but rare. Yeah.
The hot summer we had 2 years ago,
Yeah.
that made
People
everyone.
started selling.
People were like, oh my gosh, people started putting them in. And then last year it wasn't that hot. And then, yeah, so you're gonna see a couple eventually. That's why I mentioned it.
Buy the 4 unit. It looks-
Don't do that. It's taking, I know, by all means. That's what I have. That's what I have in my house too. Does anyone know what this picture on the left is? Which piece of equipment? Let's go back. I'll give you a clue. Oh, sorry. It's one of the blue columns. It's one of those water heaters. That's an indirect water heater. So back there, that's the boiler, but that's being heated by the boiler. The one on the right, this is a really common one that you're gonna see in Alaska all the time. That's the tankless water heater, or 9, it's a great brand. Hot dog, that does say Modine hot dog. Those are cool. And the thing that's really neat about those, the hot dogs are the low profile ones that you're gonna see all the time, industry standard. The other style of Modine, same color, look, and jacket, we call them, I actually don't know what their term is. It's probably some weird name with a weird number on it. But we call them head knockers. And you guys have seen these all, they look like a rectangle hanging from the ceiling. And they're older, but they have a lot, we find crack key exchangers, pinholes in it, and you can see them in it real commonly. So those will oftentimes in a real estate inspection.
Talking about the gray ones?
Oh yeah.
The big gray ones.
Yep, those will oftentimes fail. Like, hey, it's kind of got cracks in it and it's blowing out carbon monoxide, and we'll put one of those in there,
You're fine.
Yeah.
For 5 years.
Don't
you're
take
fine.
any naps in your garage, you'll be fine. That on the right, that's an HRV. So the pipes on the left, you get the black jacketing, it's actually insulated. So that's the intake air coming in, and the flex on the right, it's the exhaust air going out. That's
So
what
is
you're.
it heating air in that unit?
Yeah, so essentially it's a heat exchanger. So if we had a piece of paper, in this case, sometimes they're stainless steel, but most of the time it's like a composite plastic. And you have the fresh cold air coming in and the stale exhaust air going out, and they literally just it preheats the cold air coming on in, and that's how it works. Nothing too complicated. Has
So
a
where
blow-
is the preheated air? Continue to heat? That unit or another?
The preheat air then gets sucked out, gets pushed outside.
Mix it up.
Okay.
So.
Oh, the preheat, okay, so I'm sorry, preheat,
So
okay,
it's
so I'm
only
sorry.
preheated, so there's another unit that's like, I'm always confused when I see those.
No, okay, so that's a good
So
question.
it preheats and then heats it. in that unit.
Yes, all in one, so,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
And you service those.
Yeah, so inside of them, like, there is a filter in it. similar to a furnace, but it's.
And I don't think people change it.
No, they're not, oh, you're right, they're not changing, but they're actually washable, and the typical way, you usually wash them in your dishwasher, there's a couple different ways of doing it. But there's also, there is a fan in there, there's a couple other electrical connections. There's, one of the biggest things I see too, like Jess Hall, it just comes to mind, a lot of Jess Hall homes, is in lieu of a bathroom fan, you're gonna have this little button on the wall, it's a little green looking button, it's a little boost. Those are boost buttons. What that is that's a way to send a signal to this to turn on. It's a bunch of different ways of controlling it. That's one. The reason why I mention that is oftentimes these boost buttons are inoperable. People don't even really know because they do go bad. So part of what we're looking at when we're inspecting and servicing HRVs is making sure that all the boost buttons work.
Can I tell you something that I heard multiple times
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
about the HRVs? They'll be like, well, we don't want to service that because we don't even use it. We don't need it. We turn it off. We don't use it. Don't need it. So we don't want it. And kind of my thought process, which is like, I don't know anything, is like, if the house was built with it, I feel like there was probably a need for it. I don't know if that's true or not, but like, if it's there, it should probably be operational.
So now I'm confused. If it's there and they don't use it, does it heat?
Well, because it's just the fresh air that they're drawing in, right?
So that's a good question. Okay, so to be clear, this is not a heating appliance. This is for mechanical, this does not take the place of your boiler.
This is just exchange.
This is just purely exchange.
Preheating it, and then it still goes to the force fire.
Exactly, yes. And in a case of where you have a boiler, it's on its own independent ducting system. So what Devin was saying, you're right. So back in like 2005 to probably about 2010, you guys might have remembered the home weatherization program. That thing was huge, and just basically contractors got rich. I got in about 6 years too late, 5 years too late. But as part of Alaska housing guidelines, as part of that program, you saw a ton of HRVs going on in for the energy efficient aspect of it. Now, here's the reality: is not all houses that it got installed in have to have them because they're leaky enough. If you guys are familiar with energy auditors and blower door tests and all these things that you've heard of, what they're doing is they're measuring what's called infiltration. And that's a known infiltration rate where they can say, hey, this much air actually seeps into space and it exchanges all the volume of air in the space X amount of times per an hour. Okay. I don't know exactly what that threshold is, but once you reach a certain threshold, and depending upon what you have in your house, whether it's like, yeah, we cook all the time, we got 3 dogs, we got a bunch of plants, and 6 of us that live here, we're putting up a ton of moisture, you'll have a problem. So again, when you have and here's a good rule, you have a 5-star plus house, you definitely want one of these. My first house was a C4 house, it was 5-star plus, did not have one of these. I got about ½ an inch of ice on my windows every winter, especially with the blinds down, and it ruined all my windowsills until I put one of these in. So because your house isn't breathing. No.
So does this remove the moisture also?
Yes. So yes, that's another great question. So we talked earlier about how there's boost buttons in your bathroom. That's going to act in lieu of a fan. A lot of them have one central control. And the central control is going to operate off of typically 2 different modes. One, relative humidity. So you can set it to whatever relative humidity you want. Whenever it reaches whatever you have it set at, it kicks on to lower the humidity, keep it in that range. Or you can have it set to run 20 minutes out of every hour, 40 minutes out of every hour, or nonstop continuously. So yes, it will remove humidity. That's what it's meant for.
Will it also increase it? Pump in the water?
No, it is not pumped in the water, but that's a humidifier that you install in the ductwork. That's a different situation. But this one moves in the circulates. Keeps nice and fresh. All right, that's a really bad picture. I apologize on the right. That's just a basic furnace that, I mean, heats up the air, blows it around in ductwork throughout your house or space. On the left, that's a wall furnace. In that case, that's actually a gas wall furnace. It's really basic. It just blows out heat. All right, here's a good one. On the left, how often, have you guys ever had a problem with a canvas connector being called out by a home inspector? It's a really common thing in a garage. So where you'll see what that is on the left, the black canvas with metal connections on the side, is on a furnace installed in, this is where I see it the most often, You probably see some other examples. And a furnace installed in a garage, you'll see this very often onto the ductwork that then, goes into the wall and feeds the house. And most home inspectors are writing that up because it doesn't make fire code. That's kind of a little bit out of our purview for a mechanical contractor. However, I do see it all the time and it has to do with that. So I didn't know if that was a thing for you guys or not. I
I've seen
get
a
this.
lot of flexible duct anywhere on plans.
Yeah, there's not a ton of it, but there's enough of it where it comes up, I get this phone call from a savvy real estate agent. My home inspector said that this needs to happen. Okay, it's relatively easy change. But that's another thing too, I'll just go on a quick tangent, is the home inspectors they're actually, they test and they do a different code that's on the building code. Mechanical contractors in this state, every state adopts a different code. It's either the IPC or the UPC, International Plumbing Code, or Uniform Plumbing Code. In Alaska, it's the Uniform Plumbing Code. So a building inspector is going to be trained and they're going to cite code from the IRC, which is their generalistic construction code, which doesn't in fact have conflicts with the UPC, the Uniform Plumbing Code adopted by the state. So in that case, the UPC, which is specific, takes precedence. I see this all the time when you talk about CPR valves. I see it all the time. It's actually not, there's a lot of overlap, but it's not exactly the same. So again, that's some minutia stuff. I don't typically argue home inspectors, but I will ask a lot of questions.
I do.
Yeah. Arguing with inspectors will get you in big trouble. They'll find a way to be right. So we usually just do what we're asked to do and kind of communicate that.
I had an Anchorage home inspector tell us that the gas furnace that was in the crawl space had to be moved upstairs.
So,
In Anchorage, it is, right?
okay, you brought up a good point. So I talked earlier about how I hate commuting. Well, Anchorage has its municipality. The municipality has its own code, has its own statutes. And I'm not up on them anymore. I don't work there anymore. We're not licensed to do it. We stay out of it. We work in Eagle River, but Eagle River, while being technically part of the municipality, is not subject to municipality inspections and so forth and things like that. So yes, they might be, that might be an accurate statement, but the municipality has its own set of stringent guidelines that we don't have to adhere to. Doesn't mean we don't want to do things that are unsafe, but I mean, I don't see why. We install them in crawl spaces all the
Seemed
time.
crazy, I know. All new-
Seems crazy. Yeah, it seems crazy, right? You can't put a propane appliance in the.
It was a propane plant.
I know, yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, so for example, do I have a problem with it from a practicality standpoint? Absolutely not. It's in the manufacturer's instructions, it's a very common practice. That's what they decided to vote in, and that's what they want to enforce. I guess, I don't know enough about it.
Maybe we had to reconstruct the entire house. and put them upstairs.
Yeah, I would hate to be involved in that at all, just I'm sure that wasn't a good time. Yeah, real dumb.
So, didn't sell, lots of tears, making money.
I have a question about, that might be kind of an in-depth question, but I've seen this in multiple houses and I'm not sure what the best solution is for it, or if there is a solution that is not super obvious. So Amy's built homes where they put the little vents in the heat ducts
Mhm.
to heat the garage.
Mhm.
As opposed to, which the inspectors will call out as a breach in fire.
No, I would call that too. No, that's.
So, but, okay, so then, the homeowner will say, well, they'll want them plugged, they'll want them covered or whatever. They want that ducting covered so that it doesn't breach the fire barrier. But then the furnace is in the garage and so is the water heater. And so they're like, well, I'm gonna not heat my garage because I have these things in here that
Mhm.
need to be in normal.
Yeah, so let me touch on that for a second. So I am not an expert in the whole fire barrier type of thing. That's kind of like building code. And that's really not why I had a problem with it, because I'll write that up too. And this is actually, I don't have the code off the top of my head, but it's in there. You cannot have ductwork that communicates, aka serves, your shop garage area at the same time as living space. If you leave your car running, or a four-wheeler, or a snow machine, or anything in your garage, there's supply and return ducts in there. You have your baby sleeping in the next bedroom, that's pumping CO into it. So that's 100% not heated that way. I see it all the time. The solution in that case is you do have to, like I said, plug off the heating vents, and then you have to add, if they want it heated, a separate means to heat that. Now, if there's any kind of furnace or water heater or something in there, yeah, you definitely want to heat that space. If there's nothing like that in there, and you know, in a certain part of your house, and you want to have a nice little garage, that's your choice. But it's absolutely a health and safety thing for it. Now, let's say that it was your house, and you're like, and you bought some house that, you know, this is just my studio, I paint in here. I don't have a problem with that. You can do what you want. It's your house. But from a code point of view, you absolutely cannot, should not do it. Yeah, that's my problem with it. It has to do with the cross connection of potential for carbon monoxide and stuff. If that answers the question.
It does. I've seen it like multiple times in 80s houses and they're like, well, we bought it like this. And I'm like,
Yeah,
He lived like this 30 years.
yeah.
exactly. And that's the fight that we have all the time is, you know, I don't want to make people spend money or deals fall apart for any reason like that. But again, I can cite, when you can cite the code and you can say, hey, this is just not safe. Like I say it all the time, when we have to red tag people, it comes up 2 or 3 times a year. We go to someone's house and man, there is carbon monoxide, it's going off on the meter. There's all kinds of things. This thing is so illegal. You know, if someone died, I'm going to prison. Yeah, we lock them out, tag them out. People get really mad about that, but I might have saved their life. Okay, so real quick, real basic. We do stuff with property managers. I don't know who does the property management or if that's Katie? Oh, okay. I've only spoke to Katie on the phone. All right, I figured, because how many could there be around here? You know, at the end of the day, I recommend preventive maintenance for property managers. If nothing else, then just have someone get eyes on the system. You know, it seems like a lot of times where we're going to do, we're getting called out for, we don't have any heat. We're going out there, and this place is a disaster zone, and no one really knew. It's not really nice. If it's in the crawl space, maybe it's not. This is good to get an extra set of eyes on things. At the end of the day, you know, depending on how many properties you manage, you're getting a lot of phone calls as it is. Preventive maintenance absolutely reduces the amount of phone calls that you get on an emergency basis. And then as far as setting expectations, you can say, hey, while this is still working, here's some serious problems with it, not health problems or safety problems, but here's some problems with it. That's why I don't recommend simply using more money into it. And you need to consider saving up your rents and next year replace it, just like you would if your roof's going out. Well, you can see that a little easier because there's moss on it, or there's a leak. Who's looking at the hot water or the heating systems until it's catastrophic failure? Price is going to be a lot cheaper for your owners if you have time to shop around and get 3 or 4 quotes to replace the heating system in July versus when it goes out on 2 days before Christmas. So
And no one answers it.
we do. All right. So this is, we've asked lots of questions, more time for questions. Anything you got? I'd be happy to answer if I can. Covered it. All
Did
right.
an excellent job, Chris.
I appreciate that. Okay. Well, I guess
What,
that's
could
it.
you give us an idea of what your like average, like if you go out to look at a furnace, hot water heater, garage heater, what would on average would that cost if there's not any major things?
Somewhere between 205 and $300. And that's going to come, and it depends on a lot of factors. How well it's maintained, how easily it is to access. And again, we do it on an hourly rate. We can do it pretty quick. The thing about an hourly rate though too, that I like, and again, a lot of these systems, if I gave you a flat rate pricing on everything, now if I did readings for you, I'm going to take a look at your system. I'm going to know exactly what you have. I'm going to give you a flat rate price on that. Here's how all contractors are going to do this. So if I have I'm giving you a flat rate price on a boiler. So hey, this is what I'm going to charge you to inspect your boiler. I can't in good conscience say, hey, this very basic low efficiency boiler that's serving 2 heating zones, okay? I can't charge the same amount of money that I can for that as far as this $600,000, $700,000 custom home that has a bunch of stuff going on. So in typical is there'll be a higher price point in order to cover your butt. Well, that's why part of the reason why I don't do a flat rate pricing on that, because if it's a really basic system, I can get through it really basic and really quick on the next one. And conversely, if it's more complicated, I need to be able to give the attention that it needs. So in general,
It depends.
$205 to $300. And
I think my question was more related to what you just said, is like, you know, when we're giving owners like net estimates
Yeah.
on potential
Yeah.
costs.
exactly.
What would be, if we wanted to use your
Yeah.
company, what would be a safe?
Yeah, that's a safe bet. And so what happens is when you call on our anatomy of the service call type of thing, say, hey, here's what I think I have, or you might say, hey, I have no idea, but here's what I'm looking to get done. And your service manager can go, okay, yeah, and this is where it's located. All right, it's gonna be typical of 1 to 2 hours to do something like this. As soon as I have inspection reports, I'll get them over to you with any recommended repairs. And here's another thing too, I recommended repairs. You asked earlier about, you know, who you're sending over, how qualified as well, right? So here's something I see all the time, used to drive me nuts, still drives me nuts, is let's say you have a house and everything looks really nice and clean from what you can tell, and someone does the inspection and they say, hey, it needs a new inducer. If you've ever heard that, needs a new XYZ, a new part out of it. Well, why, or why would you recommend that? What we do is, and some people tend to say, tell you, oh, it's making a noise or something. Yeah, sure, maybe, okay. On a lot of these systems, there are electrical readings that you can take on all of the stuff. So for example, if you have a fan motor that blows air, right, runs off electricity, we take an amperage rating on this. Every motor has a recommended maximum amperage rating. And when it exceeds that, that's a telltale sign of how it's failing. That's what we as technicians do with our job. So we might say, yes, while this furnace is working, I recommend that you replace this. This is why it's your choice to. Could it make it another 5 or 10 years? Absolutely. But is it over the maximum rated amperage, and is it likely to fail? Absolutely. So that's kind of like where that's a decision that we don't get to make. You know, that's kind of your guys, hey, house is sold as is, no problem, cool. But
Speaking of failing, one more question.
Yeah.
How do we know, or when is the appropriate time to change out?
okay,
It seems like sometimes, well, we'll just go ahead and change it out because we don't know. Or it's not working, that's all.
honestly, I've seen, I mean, there's such a huge variation of how long they can last. They're cheap, they're a relatively cheap part, especially if you buy them yourself. I'd say every year, if you want to make them cheap and easy, you can probably make it every 3 years.
Give it a hire someone to come do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, a lot of it's, you know, getting there in the first place, not performance. So to be safe, and then if you wanted it every 3 years, I'm sure you'd be just fine.
But there's no way to look at this was.
Technically, there is a way to test it, but it's kind of, it's more screw around than sort.
You can't just look at it. That's really black. I think you change it.
So
Because you can clean them usually with my brush.
you can clean them. So a thermocouple, how that works is when you heat a thermocouple up, it's surrounded in a copper jacket. I'm not exactly sure what the alloy is inside. When you heat it up, it makes a very, very small amount of electricity. This small amount of electricity is then used to power your gas valve, which then operates certain appliances. The reason why I say all that is when you're testing them, you could take one off, heat it up with a lighter or a torch, measure how much power, how much energy it's actually putting on out, and then you know if it's good or not. That's where screwing around is probably works. So there you go. So you know what, man? Every 3 years you get. But honestly, thermocouples, you're only going to see that with a standing pilot line. That's massively getting phased out. Any kind of new equipment, anything in the last 5 or 10 years, it's not going to have a thermocouple. It's going to be automatic sparking. Generally speaking, there's not. Water heaters are a great example, but water heaters still have, a lot of water heaters will still have a thermocouple.
I just think everything I got.
You're old, man.
Yeah, anything else, Evan?
Do you have a sample of what your report looks like?
I can email you some of that. I didn't want to make this overly salesy. I want to make this educational. So yes, I can.
No, I think it's good. It's just good to like have options. And I mean, I'm assuming this, so don't.
Soon.
I'm gonna assume that since it says, rock solid
Mhm.
plumbing and heating, that if we also have plumbing repairs, you guys can do that too? Or is that a totally separate person you would say?
No, we do all that.
Like if something on the inspection was like, yeah, they need your heating system, clean service inspected, whatever, and your hot and cold are reversed.
We do it all. No, we do it all. Is the
That's
short,
nice.
is the short answer of that, yeah.
And we're realtors, you're supposed to come here to upsell us.
Yeah.
I don't know, and not, I mean, not off the bat necessarily.
Oh, you're gonna.
Yeah, I know where you
Give us
guys
a
are.
He's
I'm
gonna give us
I'm-
like the
I'm a
cool.
mile down the road, I do your resource, things like that. I get a lot of realtors text me a picture and go, what the hell am I looking at here? Is this a problem? You know, you kind of get an idea before you ever get a
So we
formal
can stop doing
inspection.
that to Jeremiah.
No,
No,
no, by all means.
honestly, though, I do what's great about Rock
Jeremiah
Solid.
sent it to me.
No, I think what's great about Rock Solid and a handful of other companies is they do both plumbing. You don't have to go to a separate contractor to go fix a hot and cold mixing valve when your furnace is working. So
Will you install exterior gas line and risers?
We do all the time.
If the hole's not done?
Yeah, we did.
that's what his parents are for.
We were in equipment.
And Chris.
We also have a 30-year-old workforce named Dave, who's like 250 and 5% body fat, so he's also on other pieces of equipment.
He was like, where is he?
Oh, yeah. So Dave-
Bring him next time.
Oh, yeah, he's-
If you want to do the other
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. Dave gets a lot of
Does
requests.
does he charge extra for Dave?
No, he's a lot of requests for return visits. You know, he doesn't like, he's like, he keeps hitting his head on the vans. He's like 6'6". I'm like, Dave, I can't get a taller van. You gotta deal with it. You know? So, kinda funny. But one last thing on that, just as far as like having someone you can send pictures to on contact information, all that other stuff. It's really nice because there are certain pieces of equipment, just like those lemon cars, right? There's a lot of lemon heating systems out there that weren't necessarily installed on. Here's a bad idea. 20, 15 years ago, they thought they were a good idea, but bad. Things like backseat, things like complete key, things like, if you see, you know, Yorks can be bad in some cases, not necessarily, but there's a couple hot button items where in the heating industry, it's like a cuss word. You're like, oh my God, is that one of those?
Well, McLean Ultra, when they
Well,
first came out.
Well, McLean Ultra, that's a huge problem with heat exchangers all the time, and I'm getting rich off that. So,
Those are the boilers?
Yeah.
That are in-
yeah.
The gray front.
Yeah,
Oh,
When they first came out.
I'm pretty sure I've seen one of those.
I pretty much live at Donna Marie's in Wasson Circle.
That's what I was gonna
Pretty much
say.
live
That's,
there. Yeah, not a surprise. So,
it's not a Donna Marie's, but it's on the right way.
all right, let's not later. Anything else?
If we have, like, you know, sometimes we'll have things happen and then, you know, they're like, this is, you know, needs to be repaired. Can we send you, like, if the homeowner wants to have like a couple bids on
Sure,
repair work?
Yeah, absolutely. And so how that's gonna work is, again, the way that I do our service stuff, now we do a lot of hard quotes and we do get flat rate pricing for certain things, but on something like that, you send me over an inspection report and say, hey, what can you do? I could, within reason, some things I can give you a hard quote, say this is exactly what it will cost, but you service the equipment, this is what you have, it'll take us 1 to 2 hours at this rate. To shoot you to use. So we control costs where we can, but like I said earlier, I don't like to totally pigeonhole myself, and I stick within that. And if something's crazy, which should probably never happen, we communicate. Just communicate, like, hey, this is what's going on. That saves a lot of problems. And the other thing too is, on a real estate deal, I'm not, you know, exactly sure what to take, 6 to 8 weeks once under contract to close, something like that.
More like 8 now.
Well, okay. Some of this heating equipment, by the time you call us, and we'll get right, you know, if it's in the middle of winter and we're buried with no heats, which happens all the time, and taking care of the property management needs or something maybe. Give us a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, we get out there, we can give you a report, you get that. If it's something that's bad, you need time to negotiate it. And then once that's done, if it's a part that needs to be shipped, you know, with the supply chain stuff, with the COVID crap, it takes a while to get parts, sometimes depending upon what it is. So then you have to ship that up. This can take a matter of a couple of weeks from start to finish. So it's a good thing to get us on the front end. And also you can use anything that we're doing as a part of your contract negotiations. I don't know. And in a case, if you ever need an expert to explain something to a homeowner, you don't want to speak to it, I'd be happy to do a conference call or email or just explain why we're doing what we're doing. And usually it's cited, not usually, but it's going to be cited by code, it's going to be cited by manufacturer's instructions, the workman's practices. You know, we make our money based upon referrals and, you know, reviews to our business and just having a good name to operate on. So we're not looking to pull the hood of anybody. I mean, you can share a sheet many times. But once again, once.
Chris.
Yeah, okay. I better get back to it, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent job.
Yeah. Oh, those are fancy.
Yeah, if you guys need to, this is my, so you can just.
It's a business card, but it's metal.
Yes. Good. Shake someone in the neck. It's probably killing
I'm
them.
mechanical, it is kind of funny side, so it's actually. Me personally, I am most of the time. We have guys. They're team side.
So, yeah, I should have on there right now. Actually, I want to enjoy my birthday day.
So you can, so the signals, they have some big work.
Just silly. That's an hour freaking thing. How many missed calls do I got? 1, 2, 3. So slow. No,
There's 700